Hey, what's up, folks? Today we're joined by professional drummer Pete Parada, who was a former member of the band The Offspring, but got kicked out of the group because they wouldn't give him a vaccine exemption, even though he has Guillain-Barré syndrome. And the main story we're talking about today is even though Biden ended the COVID national emergency after multiple years, it seems as if the vaccine mandate is still in place, the one that kept Novak Djokovic from entering the country, our DJ friend Akira the Don, and hundreds of millions of people. When is that mandate gonna end? And hopefully we could leave this era in history and never repeat these mistakes again. God bless you. Dream Rare Podcast with a special guest starts now. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from our... Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of the Dream Rare Podcast. I have a special guest today, Pete Parada. How are you doing, brother?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, so we want to talk about the national emergency ending because it sounded like everything was going to go away, but it seems like the travel mandate's still in place. But before that, I want to just open the floor to Pete and let him tell his story because, you know, I've looked into your history. You have a huge history of touring with multiple different bands, being a professional drummer on tour, being a huge asset to a lot of people, performing with the Offspring for over a decade, it looked like. And then it seemed like they kicked you out of the band because you wouldn't get a vaccine. And even though you had a diagnosis of Guillain-Barré, which is a crazy story. So as long as you want, tell that story. It's just wild.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I'm a musician, primarily a drummer, best known for playing with bands like Saves the Day, Face to Face. I've always also worked with My Chemical Romance and Devo and Rob Halford from Judas Priest. Currently working with Tim Pool on some music, and I have a new band called The Defiant that we can talk about later. But primarily, most people would know me from my 14 years drumming for The Offspring. And that all came to an end in the summer of 2021 when the vaccine mandates started coming down. I got a phone call from their new manager, who I didn't really know very well, and it was just the most abusive call I've ever gotten in my life. It was very belittling and threatening, and basically, in no uncertain terms, I was to get the vaccine or I would be replaced. And I tried to talk to the band about it, about the phone call and about things in general, and they took his side, backed him up, and then all communication was basically cut off after that. I found out that I was replaced through my Southwest flight app when my flight to rehearsal was canceled a few days later, and then my access to the band's work calendar was revoked. So I got the message, and I haven't had any contact with them really since. So it's you know yes, my medical condition, I was hoping to, that we're supposed to have, everyone says, oh, everyone's got to get this for the people who can't get it, right? We've got to protect them. And then you're like, well, I'm one of the people that can't get it. And it's like, no, fuck you, you get it too. So the point, I guess my point of making a statement about what happened to me was, number one, it's just wrong that this is happening to anyone. And I didn't want anybody else that was going through it to feel alone in this. Like, it's a pretty scary, lonely place to be like, oh, wow, my whole world is crumbling over this issue that shouldn't be an issue, but here we are. And I also wanted to point out that, yeah, while I had a medical reason for not getting this, I'm not just trying to create a spot to make me special here. Like, I believe that anybody should be able to say no to this at any time. Like, no is a complete sentence, especially when it comes to your own personal health. And also to show that the people who did have a medical exemption, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that I had one. I know other musicians that tried to be able to go back to work and go on tour through their medical exemption, and it didn't matter. They're not accepted. So it's not a valid argument to say, well, everyone needs to benevolently get this to protect the people that can't, when you're not giving anyone protection. And I can't speak for everyone, but I'm not looking for a special treatment or whatever. My point was, nobody should have to do this. And when your whole world is crumbling and your career is coming down, you consider everything. Like, yeah, we talked about possibility of getting a fake card and this and that, and I know plenty of people who have done that, but ultimately it didn't feel right to me to still participate in the system when I don't believe in what's being pushed, and I didn't want to be a part of any music fans or anyone who would come to our shows feeling like, well, I've got to get this vaccine. The band said to get it. They've all gotten it. Like I can't take. I don't want to be in a position that anybody else is making their decisions because they think I'm a part of this machine that says, yes, we've all got to do this. This is the right thing to do. And also, I didn't want. I've got two daughters, and I wanted to set an example to them that taking a stand while, as a family, we knew full well what we were in for. I mean, the loss of our community overnight was probably the worst part. Like, the band and their families, like we were tight. We traveled the world together. Our kids grew up together. The wives were all friends, and overnight we were just out. Like it was just gone. So to kind of explain to your kids, like, hey, we're not going to see these people anymore, and things are going to look a lot different than they did. But it was still important to me to show them that even if it costs you everything, you should take a stand on your principles and not give up any of your own bodily sovereignty or otherwise for an opportunity. Like no opportunity is worth eroding your own rights over. So it was a lot of different feelings and emotions going on through this process.
We appreciate that you did that. And, not that anyone should do that, but the fact that you had a diagnosis of Guillain-Barré and they wouldn't even bend for that shows just even more hypocrisy of like, because that is a known vaccine side effect from other
Hmm.
vaccines for sure. Like I've watched old 60 Minutes about somebody that was like paralyzed from it. So
Yeah.
the fact that they wouldn't even budge for that just shows how dishonest, unscientific, hypocritical they were. How you were
Well, and
saying, oh, go ahead.
Well just that even in the trial data that you could read through, even at the time in 2021, I mean, number 1, the glaring thing was that they didn't test for transmission, but also there was nobody in these trials with any autoimmune conditions. It was only healthy people. It was
Mm.
very, very skewed towards we're looking for a certain result and we're gonna get it.
I like how you said too, I'm not trying to just stand out. Like I think everyone has the right to not get this. And this is something that ticked me off with Republicans because obviously Democrats were pushing the mandates harder. They just were. But then I heard even certain Republicans like, say DeSantis would be like, oh, well, we just need to like keep the elderly here and these type of people. And I'm thinking to myself, if they want to be kept there. But if I'm 80 years old, it's not like, oh, I'm a slave now because I'm old, but like a 40-year-old can run around. You got to give grandma the same freedom that you give the kids. So it's like the Democrats went crazy with it, and the right would be like, well, only these people. And I'm thinking to myself, it's got to be a choice because when you take away grandma's right to her family, when you take away grandma's right to exercise, that's going to destroy her body and her spirit, which keeps old people alive faster than
Mhm.
anything. So this was such a crazy nightmare scenario, and people were acting like the craziest, most unhealthy things were normal. And the
Yeah.
fact that you weren't just a like drummer that filled in here or there, you were there for what, over a decade with these
Yeah,
people?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
And just like that, as if you didn't even exist. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's not, I up until we had a great run. Like up until these mandates hit, everything was fine. Like I've never had an issue with my performance or my attitude. I'm a pretty easygoing person to get along with. Like the only reason I'm not still there is this issue.
Right.
And, I think it's important to point that out because, some people say, oh, well, it can't just be that. He must have had weird political things or weird, there must have been something else. He must be really difficult to work with. I'm a pretty easygoing person, people pleasing, want to do the right thing. But at some point, you've got to, you've got to take a stand. And, I like to say, for 14 years, I ate every plate of shit that I was served, but the first one that I sent back, that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to somebody else. I'm not going to disclose their name, but they basically couldn't go on tour. I don't know if they're out of the band or what's going on, but I asked them, I was like, did it seem like they were even thinking like people just act like NPCs, like just do it, like just get the money, and you're just like and then you start speaking your reasons for not doing it, like, well, this is why I don't want to do it. This is why I don't want to do it. It's almost like it's not registering where they just see you almost as a pest, like. But that says a lot, like you said, if they don't even respect your bodily autonomy and the fact that you have another side effect from another vaccine, like how
Didn't
much do
matter.
they
Yeah.
respect? Yep. And that really makes you think of what they think of you as a person. Because if they don't even care about that, then like, what am I, just a piece of meat that you're like, do this, go here? Like, dude, I'm
Well,
telling
that
you, I
was the
can get
hard.
it.
That's what I'm saying. That was the hardest part, was losing that kind of community, because you're like, hey, we're all family here. Like, I've spent more time some years with them than my own family, and all of this, But you realize, hindsight being 2020, everybody loves you when you're doing what they want.
Mm.
Everybody's family, as long as we're all saying yes. And then as soon as you say no, you find out where you stand, and that's how it went.
I think that's real, like bravery, real authenticity, because even people that I thought were strong and that I thought were smart, like just watching them be like, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but I want to travel. And then I'm trying to explain to them, if you're giving up your body for this thing in order to travel that you don't believe in, some of these people I'm talking to are 25, 26, 27, like they're not even at risk. It's the president, on top of the fact that I'm not letting that in my body, the president of now, they can do that. They can hold your entire life over your head, your career, your family, your travel, your access to your grandparents over an injection. Keep in mind that the 2 out of the 3 of these injections were synthetic mRNA, which is this brand new technology that isn't other vaccines. And yeah, and or like you said, the fake vaccine passport. You're basically getting the card that says you're playing along with it. So I appreciate that you not only didn't do it, but didn't cave like that, because I think 9 out of 10 people did, get the fake
Yeah,
card.
I mean, I know a lot of people that are working on fake cards, and I don't have a problem with it. Like, everybody on the planet was put in an impossible situation, and everybody was inundated with fear. We're locked in our homes, glued to the news, fear, fear, fear all day long. So I understand everybody's position. I understand people that were scared about it. I so for me, whatever anybody had to do to navigate this for themselves and their family, I don't have I don't take issue with that. Would it have been nice if more people would stand up? Yeah, of course. I would appreciate that. It's lonely, you know, out here. It'd be nice to kind of spread it around a little bit.
Right.
But I don't I don't begrudge anybody doing whatever they have to do to get through this and take care of themselves and their family. Like, it's everybody's choice to do how they want to do it.
Yeah, that's a thoughtful approach, because I mean, some people, even looking back at it, they're like, well, he had to do this, he had to do this, talking about the politicians. And I look at it kind of like you're looking at it, like we were held for ransom, basically. So if someone had to scramble for their family, I do understand that, because it wasn't a simple policy or this person just did this. It's like they were holding us for ransom, like we were captured war prisoners, trying to ruin every aspect of your life, mentally, physically, psychologically, and telling you you're ruined. You can't make money. You can't put food on the table. That was the most abusive, insane, evil scheme I've ever seen. So it is important to remember that it wasn't just an option. It was like we're gonna try to ruin your life. It was a threat, basically.
Well, it was you were hit with it for a year building up to the rolling the vaccines out. It was just like more things taken away all the time. You can't have this back. And now we're dangling this carrot. Well, if you just do this thing, you can have your life back. And it's like, well, why do I have to ask for my rights back? Like,
Right.
why were they taken in the first place? And that's why I like to say to people that, at the time, that we're just like, look, everyone just has to do it. There's no sense, discussing it or having a conversation about it. I just want my life back. And I feel like, a year and a half later from my story breaking, I look at people and go, did you get it back? Did you get your life back? Did you get all those things that you gave away? Did you get it back, or do things still look different? And was it worth it? Like, I don't know.
I got petty with it, because when people did get the vaccine and they started acting like I called them vaccine supremacists, like they're walking around with their chest puffed out, and they're starting to be like, I could take my mask off now. I was laughing so hard When like 2 weeks into that, they're like, actually, you know what? You guys got to do all the same stuff. Like it literally didn't even last 2 weeks. And I remember like one of my neighbors, like, I feel, and I'm like, they're going to take it away from you too. And then they did. And I like low key, I was like, haha, gave him a little like Nelson from Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean, what did you get back? Like immediately the carrot was taken away. Well, it's like, oh, cool, you did that. Well, oh, by the way, we know we said it was just the two shots, but now there's going to be boosters. Now there's going to be every 6 months. Now it looks like it only works for 3 months. Like, everything was incremental. Everything was, oh, just do this. It's just this. It's just this, and then it piles up and piles up, and then all of a sudden they start pulling pieces out. Like, oh yeah, it's going to be more than that. Like it never ends. It,
Do you think the people that did that to you and just the people that did that to everybody, do you think they feel stupid now because everything is pretty much gone? Everyone can almost do anything besides the mandate that we'll talk about next. And it's like deep down inside, they have to know that all of these things that they did with this idea that it was going to be like that for a while pretty much immediately disappeared as soon as, Big Pharma and the government got the results. You think they
I
feel
think
dumb?
I don't know. I see more of a doubling down of people, and like no one likes to admit that they were wrong, right? But I see a doubling down of people saying, well, we did the best with what this was the information we had at the time, which isn't true. You know, we had lots of information at the time, but you were ridiculed for looking into it. You were ridiculed for asking any questions about it. And it was right there for you to read. There wasn't a lot to go through, but it was there. So it's disingenuous for any of these people to say, well, we didn't have a choice. It was an emergency. It was this, it was that. And what I would rather see is more people going, "Hey, you know what? I got it wrong. I got it wrong, and I'm sorry to the people that I ridiculed, who turned out to be right, who I dismissed or called crazy or conspiracists. You weren't allowed to question this. You weren't allowed. Like it was you were the worst kind of person if you wouldn't just get on board. And I think there needs to be some sort of atonement for that before we all just move on like nothing happened.
Right. Especially all this damage. Like I could go on a whole nother tangent, but between both parties, and I know each party likes to one blames Putin, one blames the other party. They printed so much money in 2020. They locked down stuff. Even if you lock down a business for a week, the amount of damage that does to back
Mhm.
everything up for like a week, that it takes a year to fix that, let alone a couple months. So all of this economic hardship we're dealing with on top of all this stuff was all, I think, a result of these COVID policies. But when it was going on, I tried to equip people with the information because I know if you know what you're talking about, these bullies, it's harder for them to bully you. Like I know so many people that said, I'm not getting it. And they said, we're taking your job. I'm not getting it. We're taking your job. I'm not getting it. Okay, I'm leaving. And then they're like, wait, where are you going? Well, I'm leaving.
Mhm.
You said I couldn't be here. Oh, no, no, no. And that's even more it's even more messed up to do that than to just try to make someone get it, because
Right.
basically what you're trying to do is blackmail them and threaten them into getting it, knowing that you don't even actually mean that. You're just like really trying to get them, but you'll still keep them because you need them. I'm like, what? The amount of people that I heard that story from, I guess I gotta quit now. And the second they quit a week later, oh dude, we're backed up, we need you, work on a Zoom
Right.
call. It's like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really about protecting anyone the same way that, I mean, we can talk about the Biden thing here in a second, whether they're going to lift this mandate or not. It's it's not about protecting anyone. It was about compliance. It was about, getting everyone to be on board. And I think if he doesn't lift the international traveler vaccine mandate, then at this point, if you're saying there's no more emergency, but we're still going to leave this on, then it's just bullying. It's just about compliance and control. It's not about anything medical or your health or anything like that.
America's one of the only countries with one of these mandates left, so it just
Mhm.
scientifically it makes no sense. But before we get into that, I want to ask two more questions. One is, has anyone from that group, I mean, the Offspring or any of the managers or anybody that was in the decision to kind of cut you out, has anybody reached out to you? And also, have there been other blessings that, like your new band, working with Tim Pool, like has that kind of, overshadowed the negatives and kind of built a new life?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question there. The first question is an easy answer. That's just no. I've never heard from anyone there. I don't. I'm not holding my breath for that. But uh, Yeah, so at the time, it felt like the end of the world, and it took me a while to get back on my feet and just kind of, you know, figure out like, oh man, like that part of the reason we put a statement out at all was to let people know, number one, hey, I'm not in this band anymore. I need work. Like, contrary to anybody's beliefs, I'm not independently wealthy. I don't get pretty fly for a white guy royalties. I'm a working musician, so it's a hustle. You're always, trying to put things together for your family. But after everything happened, like, the amount of support that rolled in was really kinda shocking. Like, I was just expecting, 90% blowtorch from the world on this, and we really got, 95, 99% support,
Mm.
which was amazing, and so many people still, a year and a half later, every day, I'll get messages from people like, "Man, I wish I could say something, but I appreciate that you stood up," or, "Oh, man, I lost my job over this too, and I took a stand," and, or especially lately, we get a lot of messages that are, uh, one of the biggest regrets in my life was taking this thing. Like, looking back, it all seems really weird, all the pressure to do it, that everybody had to, like, there's a lot of regret out there. But the silver lining for me has been, this influx of support. Like, somebody like Tim Pool that picked up my story, almost immediately and got right on it and was very vocal and very supportive and super great, just, like, contacted him and just said, "Hey, thanks for your support," and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come hang out? I play music too, let's make some songs." So we've just been working on music together for a year and a half, which has been awesome. And, and then somebody like Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, who went through the same thing as me. He was the announcer on Jimmy Kimmel for since the beginning, lost his gig over, vaccine mandates. And, I had seen his story, he had seen my story, and he reached out and just said, "Hey, um, I think we should work together. I think we should do something." And he says, he's a such a sweet, funny guy because he's like, "I got this feeling." He's like, "Do you know Greg Camp from Smash Mouth?" And I'm like, "I know of him. I've never met him." And he's like, "Well, he lives in Nashville." And he goes, "I think the three of us would be interesting if we start writing music together." So we started a band that's become the Defiant, and we added Johnny Rio from the Street Dogs on bass and Joey LaRocca from the Briggs on guitar. And we've spent the last year writing and recording an album that we're finishing up mixing and mastering and stuff right now that'll be out later this year. And it's just been a blessing for me to not just get my sea legs back under me, but to feel good about playing music again, to feel good about the people I'm working with, and to feel good about my own drumming. Like, it just for a while it was like, well, I'm never going to play again. Who's going to want to work with me? You're a cast out pariah in the music industry because everything was, you got to get on board with this. And I don't necessarily think that my band should be singled out for this happening. I mean, everybody was doing this to people. My guys just drew the short straw that I was willing to speak up about it. But, you know, working with Tim and working with the Defiant has really, um, gotten my legs back under me, and I feel good about making music again, and I'm excited about what I'm doing, and it's kind of reinvigorated my love for why I started doing it in the first place. I have my own studio here, that's where I'm talking from, where I track drums for people remotely from all around the world. I'm doing producing and have gotten into songwriting, which is something I've never really done before because I've always been, the drummer is more of a support position in any band. But it's been nice and cathartic to kind of start writing songs and having my own voice and having things to say and getting all of that out. So, yeah, while it was catastrophic on the front end, the blessings on the back end have been immeasurable.
The new rock star is being rejected by the rock industry because when they're selling vaccine passports and Moderna shots, the best thing is to be rejected by them. And you brought up Smash Mouth. I did Sturgis. I have a song with the band Trapped, and it was us. It was Trapped, and then Smash Mouth at Sturgis 2020. And a lot of people were turning it down because they're like a bunch of pansies, like, oh no, like we can't do this because it was the only thing going on because South Dakota wouldn't close down and liberals were freaking out about it. It was
But
fun, man. It was like a lot of people, and like just no masks in the middle of like when masks were everywhere.
Hmm.
It opened that door for us too, where it's like, um, that's the new rock star. You don't want to be on stage selling Johnson and Johnsons with.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Well, that's awesome I remember when that event came out and everyone was losing their minds. It was so irresponsible and oh my
Right.
God. And it's just like at some point we've all got to live.
Absolutely. And it turned out to be it aged well because I think a lot of the people that hunkered down, it's like now they were trying to pretend like, well, the COVID numbers are too high. That's why we can't go out. And I know it eats them alive, whether they admit it or not, that the numbers are still high. Nobody even watches the numbers anymore because they haven't gone to
No,
zero. So
right.
you really gotta like. I see them as like a meme. They're like, ugh, but they know deep down inside that something was a lie because the numbers are not zero, and now they're out and about with
Yeah,
the
we just don't hear of them anymore because it's not convenient to the narrative.
For sure. So I have this article here because Biden ended the emergency, and it's I guess a 3-year emergency started in March 2020 under Trump, continued
Yep.
forever, and those emergencies, God knows what else is on the backs of them, the funding, all the infrastructure. But the one thing that really no one's reporting, I actually had to go to Freight Waves, who's like a basically train and trucking blog, because no one's really reporting on this. But it doesn't seem like it's ending the vaccine mandate, which a lot of people don't even know exists. Because to be fair, Democrats aren't really talking about it. Republicans, in my opinion, they don't ever talk about this very much. Like they always talk about other stuff, but this is a big point that I think everyone should talk about that they're not. The only time it comes up is when Djokovic can't play tennis in America, and then
Right.
everyone pays attention to it. But even though the emergency is ending, they're apparently still going to keep that travel mandate. So incoming travelers that aren't U.S. citizens still can't come to America. They can go to 99% of the world, but not America until possibly May. And he may even, if I could do a little pun there, a May pun, he may even keep it longer. It's not a guarantee that he'll end it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems ridiculous, especially, I mean, God bless Djokovic. Like that guy, he's obviously the best of the best of what he does. And for him to stand out on this, easily could have gotten a fake card, easily could have done all the things that were available. And for him to say, "No, it's bigger than this. I shouldn't have to," he had COVID already. Like it's he's really taken a stand here, and I think everybody like him that takes a stand knows that it comes with a cost. Like he knew what he was getting into. He knew he wasn't going to be able to play these tournaments. He knew that he was going to be ridiculed on Sports Center and slapped around on CNN and whatever as some anti-vax lunatic, right? But he just keeps his composure, very calm. He's handled it very classy, and just is like, all right, well, if I'm not allowed in, then I'm not coming. But he's not going guns blazing at anybody, screaming about it. He's just standing for what he believes is right. And I have so much respect for him for the way that he's handled this whole thing.
Right, and he's for those who don't know tennis, he's the number one player in the world right now. He's missed a bunch of tournaments. He had to miss the Australian Open last year. This year,
Yep.
he won it in front of Bill Gates in the audience. Like that was just
That
iconic.
was so great.
And Bill Gates, I don't like to body shame here. This is an inclusive and diverse live stream, of course. But Bill Gates is looking a little unhealthy, looking a little plump in there in the stands, and Djokovic obviously in great shape, just crushing it. I love that. Just he had to watch the unvaccinated Djokovic win a title in front of him.
Yeah, well, and the fact that he went to Australia last year, Djokovic, and then was in holding while they went to court over this, and they basically deported him, out of the country. No, you can't play. And so I'm like, cool. Is he gonna not be able to play the U.S. Open this year? He had to miss the Miami tournament, and the fact that he is taking a stand on this when not that it's the most important thing in the world, but he's like tied for the most major wins of all time, right? But now he's missed out on a couple majors that he probably would have won. Like he would be the number one player of all time, and still was just like, nope, this is more important. I'm not dealing with that. It's been
Right.
impressive how he's handled it.
I agree. And, not to get on my political high horse, but, one thing I will say is this is a Biden administration thing. So he's directly responsible. It's a federal thing. The Democrats don't care about it. And to criticize the Republicans is, I think this is a massive winning issue. I think 99% of Republicans agree that having a mandate's insane, especially if you bring in the economic damage of hundreds of millions of people can't come to America as tourists. We're losing like trillions of dollars. And then you go to independents. Independents overwhelmingly agree. And here's the thing that people don't realize because of social media echo chambers. Even I believe most Democrats agree that at this point, if 99% of the world or something along those lines is allowing people to flow freely and we're not, it doesn't actually make any sense. So this is a massive winning issue for Republicans to say we are the party of freedom, we are the party of liberty, we are the more reasonable party, but instead we got to fight over Stormy Daniels and, Trump's calling DeSantis a meatball, and it's like, and everyone's like, yeah, this is, and I'm like, dude, this is why nobody likes what we're doing, because like this is a winning issue. It's an
Yep.
easy issue. Biden is a disgrace. I mean, the things that he's doing to we're supposed to be the freest country. I think there's only 5, 6, or 7. There's very few countries in the world. We're less free on this than some of the most totalitarian governments, and Republicans barely talk about it. DeSantis talks about it. Thomas Massie talks about it. Every now and then someone talks about Djokovic, but they're acting like this isn't happening, and it's still happening.
Yeah, Massey's been awesome on this. I mean, he's the one that forced the issue for this. I think Biden had set out earlier this year, like, oh, maybe in May we're gonna look at canceling the shutdown, or the whatever he's ending. Sorry. But Massey forced the issue and brought it onto the floor and said, hey, no, why are we waiting till May? This should be ended right now. The emergency.
Right.
So he's been really cool on this kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know why it's not more of an issue, but I think everybody sits back. Most politicians are sitting and waiting and focus grouping and seeing like, oh, is this good for me or bad for me? Or no one cares about, is it good for my constituents? Is this what they want? Nobody's listening there. It's just kind of like, well, how's this going to affect me in the next election?
Right.
So I can't say I'm surprised by it. I just think it's like you said, Stormy Daniels and Trump and him and DeSantis yelling at each other. It's all distractions from each side that, to distract us from that. It's just one uniparty that's, running things, but yet we're supposed to take a side and be very tribal, and everything is so tribal and it's so divided now. And you're made to feel like you've got to take a side on every issue, and you better be on the right side of it, because if you miss checking one of those boxes, you're out of the club.
Right.
So it's a crazy environment for that right now.
And you have this whole world, all these ideas, and online, especially in political echo chambers, it's like these two things. And although I gravitate towards one more obviously, it's kind of like when you stood up for yourself and like 99% of people weren't there, and you're like, where is everyone? I thought this was like basic common sense. That's kind of how politics are, where a lot of these politicians are just really followers. They're following the narrative. They're following the fundraising. They'll be there to stand with Trump, but it doesn't mean anything. You standing with Trump, you're not a lawyer in the courtroom. You don't work for New York City. It's nice. It's nice to show your support, but what would help is if you also did something for your constituents or brought attention to other issues. So I feel like that's a lot of it too. It's just there's not a lot of creativity. I think technology has been amazing and beautiful, and I'm so grateful for it. But at the same time, it's created these narrow paths. So it's like, I see it as like someone just shriveled up in nature looking at their cell phone. They can't like jerk their head up, where we have so much opportunity and everyone's
Mhm.
just kind of doing the same thing.
Right, but no one wants it to cost them anything. When you stick your neck out one way or the other, it's going to cost you something. And I think politicians in general don't ever want to lose anything. It's just like, well, let me hang back and see which way the wind's blowing, and then I'll get on board when it's safe.
Speaking
And
of Thomas Massie, I think he proved that because he was the only politician in Washington, the only one who said that the CARES Act was a mistake and the lockdowns were weird, and the politicians should be there if like gas station attendants had to be there. And Trump tried to kick him out of the party. Trump said, get him out of the Republican Party. So
yep,
because Thomas Massie was right, and it's sad because, like you said, he's the only one bringing this to the floor. He's the only one talking about raw ingredients and like organic stuff. So
mhm.
that's the cost of sticking your neck out, is your own party will try to decimate you.
Yeah, that's how it goes. but good for him for, taking a stand.
I have one more question, and then anything else you want to say is before the lockdown and stuff. Like, did you care about politics at all, or was it just kind of an afterthought where it's like both parties are corrupt, or maybe you just didn't care at all?
No, I mean, I would have considered myself a classic liberal, right? I think because of my stance on the mandates and things, I because nobody can have any nuanced discussions on anything. If you don't agree with the current thing, you're swept over into the bad people, right? So, I got roped in, or like kind of moved into this place that's not accurate. Like, I'm not a terribly conservative person. I mean, I wrote in Bernie Sanders in the last election because I couldn't stomach Biden or Trump. I didn't feel like either of them represented how I felt about anything. So for me, I was political, but I think I was probably a little tribal, and I didn't quite get my eyes opened to it until the last election and the blue no matter who movement that really, which has so much correlation to the vaccine conversation because you would be talking to people during the primaries and say, "Oh, who do you guys like in here?" And it was always like, "Doesn't matter, blue no matter who, got to get them out." It doesn't matter. I'm like, but now this is the time where you get to ask questions and you get to decide who holds your values, and this is when you have a say.
Right.
And for people to go, no, 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 you can't do that because if you question any of these candidates, might be the one, and you're only helping the other side by weakening them by pointing out their faults. And I'm like, so we can't even ask questions that are going to get asked of them eventually. Like it made no sense to me. And so whenever somebody says you can't question that or you can't talk about that, that kind of perks my ears up to, well, why not? Like there's always an agenda. Like somebody's got an agenda here. Why can't I ask questions? And it felt the same way with COVID. Well, you can't ask questions about these vaccines because then it might make people not want to take them, and that's dangerous. And it's like, well, but there should be questions for it, this new technology that they're rolling out to the entire world all at once with all these crazy enticements from cheeseburgers to, lottery entries to lap dances to whatever, go get your shot, come get 2 free donuts. It was just like, what is this full court press, and when has everyone cared this much about everybody's health around the world all at the same time? Like all the
Right.
same all the same talking points were popping up, "Oh, it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated." Oh, well, now every leader of every country said that within 5 hours. It's just
Right.
like this coordinated effort to make everybody just do the same thing, and it was just so bizarre. And so anyway, long story short, back to blue no matter who, that's where it opened my eyes to, all right, well, this doesn't make sense. Like if I'm not allowed to ask questions of my party, then what's the point? I'm just here to be a number and, take what I get. So, if you can't speak up during the primaries and ask questions, then maybe there's a problem with the party or the system as a whole. And that's where it started to look to me more like, okay, there's one thing, and this is divisional theater to keep everybody busy and distracted while every our rights are getting eroded behind our backs.
You nailed it. The thing that I've gotten the heat for the most last 2 years, like from my quote unquote own side, is the psychology of exactly what you just said. And people just don't see it that way. Like, for example, if you're left wing and you don't want to ever question them and they just say, well, the right's so bad that you have to vote for us. That's the scheme. They're never going to change. They're never going to do anything. They're probably working with the other side. They just want you to fight with them. And the right wing does that as well. And even with Trump, a lot of people will be like, well, we'll question everyone but him. But I'm like, but he was president for 4 years and he printed trillions of dollars and he signed Operation Warp Speed and did socialist stuff and it was weird. And I'm not saying you have to hate him. I'm not saying you can't vote for him, but you don't want to question him. You just want to
Right.
like that's the whole thing is like, no, you question them, you question them. You need to question your own side, absolutely. And as a voter, my leverage is not, yeah, I could vote for the Republicans against Biden, but my leverage is in the primary. I don't want Trump to not run against everybody. I want him
Yeah.
to run against really good people because I want them to have to compete for my vote. I want to see him and DeSantis going back and forth. Well, I'll do this. Well, I'll do this. I don't want them to like blackmail DeSantis out of the way and be like, well, now I'm the guy. we need competition and they need to earn our votes. And it's like people don't understand that because it's gotten so tribal, but that's why the country has kind of been tanking for 40 years because it's been a uniparty controlled theater.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the primary is like sharpening a knife. Like if you make it through, you should be, you know, pretty strong and ready to take on the general election. But, to say, well, we can't sharpen anything, it's like, well, then everybody's just going to show up dull, and we won't get anything for it. And it, that's democracy, asking questions, grilling your leaders, pushing them on policy, and trying to find out how they really feel about things. Like if we're not allowed to do that, then that's not democracy.
Right. I always talked about and rapped about in my songs like weird stuff. I was into like theories and whatever. But 2016, I really like saw Bernie versus Hillary and then Hillary versus Trump. I never liked Hillary. My energy told me that like Bernie and Trump were both better than her and nicer than her. And then I just saw how the media operated, and that was kind of my in. And then I started talking about stuff. And then from that point on, I mean, I could pretty much see it as it was. Did you have that? You said in 2020, like, were you busy just kind of working, grinding, doing your thing, ignoring stuff, or like say like 2016 to 2020, like things were always weird. I'm not saying this is brand new, but like with the Trump, like the left went kind of crazy, like it got a little weird. Like, did you notice like cancel culture or anything, or just it kind of almost took the vaccine for you to be like, all right, this is odd, because you seem
No,
smart.
yeah, I don't. Well, I appreciate that. I don't like cancel culture, and for me, it's a free speech issue. Like if you don't like somebody's ideas, then bring better ideas and have a conversation there. But just canceling somebody because they don't agree with you, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like I'm a free speech person. Like everything to me stems from that right. All the rest of our rights come from that, and it just starts to seem nowadays that you are split into one of two sides, and you're told what you're allowed to care about and how you're allowed to feel about it. And you have to keep, checking these boxes. So to me, the between 2016 and 2020, it was like the rise of the virtue signaling. It was a bunch of people spouting off on stuff that they don't really have a good grip on, but their team cares about this morning. It's like they wake up going, all right, who we mad at today? And I can't wait. Right. And it's just like this outrage culture of waiting to be mad about something and waiting to be mad at somebody. And it's an addiction. And to me, it's just kind of like, well, you don't have to have a hot take on everything. Like it's okay to go, I don't know enough about this issue. I'm going to just listen. I'm going to take in these sides, but we've been told that the other side, whatever side we're on, the other side is always wrong and always bad. And it feels like it's done on purpose to keep us from talking to each other. So online, everyone's just screaming at each other. But if you meet somebody from a different ideology in the real world, you can have a good conversation. You can have a nuanced discussion. And it just seems like it, the system is going out of its way to make sure that those conversations are very few or don't happen at all. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I started getting more aware of what was happening during the Trump era because it was so, and I got caught up in it. It's just like, oh my God, what did he do today? Oh, what's he going to say? And then finally you sit back and go, how is it just all day long, just all we do is talk about this person and this new crazy thing they did today? Like, how is that helping anybody else? How is that making anybody's lives better?
Right.
And it was just, but no, it's gluing eyes to the television. It's selling pharmaceutical commercials, because everyone's watching the news to see what Trump's going to do next. And now 75% of commercials on the news are pharmaceutical commercials,
Mm.
and it's just like, I mean, that's a whole conversation for another day,
No,
but,
for today. It's that today combo. I love it, man.
yeah. Yeah, so for me, I started kind of waking up to what was going on during that, and by the time 2020 rolled around, and it seemed like Bernie was gonna get railroaded again by I mean, I guess you can't say it's his own party because he's technically an independent, but it was basically anyone but him was allowed to allowed to run, allowed to be the nominee. And it was the same in 2016. He doesn't get any media coverage until all of a sudden when he finally drops out and endorses Biden, then everybody wants to have him on. Now he's safe and everybody wants to hear what Bernie Sanders has to say because he has a big following, but we can't acknowledge that until he gets out of the race because he's not allowed to win because he's a bit of a wild card. We don't know exactly what he's going to do, and we're only going to put forward candidates that the party can tell them what to do, and they're just going to do it. And that's why we end up with this all around. It's got to be impossible to be a free thinking person and actually make it through a primary and into a real election with views that aren't party line.
Well, I'm glad you didn't like totally lose your mind over this stuff and you came to your senses, because for me, I grew up, I was probably more left leaning, but I didn't know it. I didn't like care about the Democrats. I wasn't like running for office. I was just like, oh, they're both puppets, but I like Democrats more because I just think Republicans are more evil. I was conditioned to feel that way.
Right.
And
Yeah.
also, honestly, the Bush era, I always knew Bush was a phony, and I knew he was like an establishment character. So that's why I thought they were evil, because they kind of were, with all the wars and stuff. I always saw through that. But then when it came time, like I got in my 20s, and I started kind of becoming a better person. I learned self-awareness, self-accountability, like real hippie stuff, real liberal stuff, not just talking about it, but I became a more thoughtful person, more compassionate. And why I didn't like Republicans more is I felt like they were less compassionate, less thoughtful, less understanding. So then when the left started losing their mind over Trump, I was kind of like, you don't have to like him. You don't have to vote for him, but you're acting like psychopaths, and you're pointing the finger at people in middle America being like, you're so this, you're so that. And you're like just as bad, if not worse now, worse. You're getting like weirder. You're trying to take away speech. So it was just the lack of them living by liberal morals, which is supposed to be, if you look up the definition, being thoughtful about people who disagree with you. They became anything but that. So that kind of hit me real quick, because I was like, I don't agree with these people, but I don't hate them. And the fact that
Right.
you're
I
so
don't need to.
hateful.
Yeah, I don't need to strip anyone of their humanity because they voted for someone that I didn't. Like it's so extreme and so divisive. It's just like, okay, well, what's the agenda here? What is the purpose of this? Like he was such a firebrand that reinvigorated the news. And as soon as he was out of office, now CNN's tanking. I mean, across the board, Fox, everyone's ratings have gone way down because they don't have their main character anymore. He got written out of the show.
Right.
So but yeah, it was a really bizarre time. And I feel like we all kind of lost our humanity a little bit just going, you know, when I finally had to get off Facebook, it was just people screaming, going, if you voted for Trump, then just unfriend me now. And I don't want to, or if you're voting for Biden, I can't believe it. And it's just like, oh, I can't do this. I
Right.
can't anymore. Because it's just, neither of those people care about you. Like you're arguing with people who do care about you, people who are in your lives or your Facebook friends,
Right.
over people who couldn't care any less. And I just didn't understand that kind of thing of like, I'm gonna write half the people out of my life because of I believe so strongly in this person who doesn't give two shits about me.
Right.
It was really bizarre.
And I want to warn the right, because I'm starting to see some of the same energy. I don't think it's as bad yet by any means, but like the way that the left dehumanized you and was ready to basically judge your entire life off of like policy differences is what I see a lot of people doing. Not like everybody, but some influencers that like Trump are doing to influencers that like DeSantis more, because it's like a hot button thing. Like I'm having even people that I've known for a while be like, oh, that's a Paul Ryan thing. Like, because Trump's saying that about DeSantis. And all I'm going to say is call out the donor money, call out all that stuff. I'm not trying to gatekeep that, because they're all taking it. The difference is, I saw Trump go on Tucker the other night, and he just said like, Gavin Newsom's doing a bad job in California, but me and him got along really well. I will never hit at him because we get along really well. And it's like, what type of person is Trump that he won't bash Gavin Newsom because they're friends and they get along? And Gavin Newsom,
Well, he said nice things about him. Yeah.
because he said nice things about him,
Yeah.
but he tries to kick Thomas Massie out of the party, who's probably the only good person in Washington, like the only one. So you'll kick out the best person in the Republican Party because he told the truth when you lied, but you won't bash Gavin Newsom because you're buddies with him. and I'm supposed to feel like this is the outsider, and I have to just bow down to him, and he's not taking donor money. He takes donor money too. He's done all the same stuff. He just pretends like he doesn't. So I'm fine with people disagreeing, and I'm fine with people wanting to vote for him. I don't care. But you're not going to tell me I'm working for Paul Ryan because I can identify that Trump also endorsed Paul Ryan. Like, it's like this clown show, or now people are trying to treat me like the Democrats did because I see through it. And I'm like, bro, he's on television saying he'll never bash Gavin Newsom because he's friends with him. Like, and that's supposed to
Right.
be like, wow, that's really anti-establishment.
Right. But there's a purity test for each party, though. You've got your boxes you're supposed to check. And it's just kind of like, I feel like there's so many more of us now that are politically marooned. I don't feel a part of either party, probably leaning way more libertarian of just like, hey, let me live my life, leave me alone, don't hurt anybody, right? But I think more and more people feel that way, and we're not allowed out of the system. We're not allowed to feel like, we can't don't have a party, and there's a purity test for everybody. Like you said, oh well, you can't, you gotta be on Trump's side if you're a Republican, or you gotta be on Biden's side if you're a Democrat. And it's like, I don't know, why don't we listen to people with good ideas or better ideas? Why don't we have a real conversation instead of just going, I'm gonna do whatever my party tells me to do? Like I think that's nonsense, and that's why we're in the mess that we're in.
Yeah, and I don't want to start a whole new bag of worms, but it's like artificial intelligence, and I'm not fear mongering about it. I think it's going to do some great things. It's able to create pictures now. It's able to write better than most journalists, and like this is really growing. And I'm not trying to fight over Trump and DeSantis for 2 years. Like I don't care which one you like better. I'm fine with calling out their flaws and their donor money, but like to me, it does seem like a controlled circus because you're going to spend 2 years talking about Biden and Trump, and there's this programming thing that's like multiplying and able to do things better than humans. I'm not afraid of it per se, but I'm definitely like interested in having more intelligent conversations around how we can kind of keep the country afloat than like yelling at my friend over a political disagreement. I don't see it.
Yeah, while we're all busy arguing over stuff, AI is learning, and it's paying attention. So yeah, I mean, it's got the potential to be really scary. I don't know how to feel about it yet. Like it seems both like it's been around forever, and also that it's very new, but that it's developing so fast now. Like not to steal the gain of function lingo, but it seems like it is gaining functions rapidly.
Right.
And it's kind of like, all right, well, is there a way? Is there a way to turn it off? Is there some kind of fail safe here, or are we all just lurching forward and going, it'll be fine. I'm back on my phone. That's all I care about. I don't know.
It's worth chatting about, and definitely in politics. Like I always talk about the main thing I say is like when it comes to the FDA and stuff like that, neither party cares. I think literally only Thomas Massey cares, maybe like a few others. And while we're fighting, the food's going to stay the same, the drugs are going to stay the same. Both parties will do vaccine socialism clearly. So it's like there's certain root level things that just never get addressed, and that's the trap. I'm not saying you can't like or vote for that person, but like you said, I mean, it hurts people's feelings because maybe they have like a doll at home, like a Fauci doll or Trump doll, where you're like, I don't think these people care about you as much as you think they care about you. They might be better than the other side, but like I
Yeah.
don't think they care as much about the things you care about as you think they do. And that's a
Yeah.
tough
Yeah,
statement for
you don't
somebody.
you don't have their ear. Their donors have their ear. Corporations have their ear. So it's okay to like somebody or root for them or vote for them or whatever, but I don't think any of us should ever pretend, especially after the last couple of years, that any of these people in positions of power have our best interests at heart.
Amen. They need to be challenged now more than ever, especially
Mhm.
after the last 3 years, not babied and not rolled out the red carpet for. Any
Right.
links or anything you want to promote? Thanks for coming on. I appreciate your perspective. We could talk about other stuff anytime. You definitely seem super with it, and we're on the same page. So, yeah, anything
Thanks,
you want to
man.
say?
I've enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram, just at Pete Parada. My band, The Defiant, you can find on Instagram at The Defiant Official, and on Twitter at The Defiant USA. You can check out my music with Tim Pool on Timcast on at YouTube, or wherever you get your streaming music. And yeah, I mean, I work out of my studio here, recording drums, producing. There's a contact sheet on my website, peteparada.com, if anybody's looking for drums or music, or get in touch. Let's work on something together. We're talking about um, Akira the Don and people like that. Me and him have been chatting about maybe trying to work on something together. So
Nice.
it's exciting to meet people and meet people like you and Akira and stuff, and be able to start putting things together. That's fun creatively, and a great outlet. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Appreciate your time. Thanks to everybody watching. And the road might be tough, but yeah, it's like the real rock star is rejecting the rock industry, and it's funny how uncommon that's becoming, even for like these tough bad boys from the '80s and like certain like hair bands and like get your vaccine, and you're like, bro, I thought you were so gangster back in the day. And
Oh, man. Yeah, Gene Simmons and Dee Snider, all these guys that I grew up loving, and they're basically calling me less than human. Not me personally, but just
right.
saying, "If you're not vaccinated, you're a murderer, and you don't care about humanity," and it's just, like, really hard to watch of, like, I know you guys are smart guys, do a little research before you just start dumping on a bunch of people that you don't understand.
Amen. And I want to let everybody know I have two new things in my store for the first time in a while. I have a shirt that says Big Farmer over Big, or not Big Pharma. So big, and I Photoshop my face into it as the farmer, just as a, like, I made the graphic design. If it's good, I made it. If you think it's not good, I'll just lie and say someone else made it. But no, just kidding. I made it. Big Farmer, not Big Pharma shirts. And then also I have God is Great hoodies. They're made in America, and I wasn't going to get them because they're expensive, and to buy in bulk, I buy them all in bulk. But people kept telling me it's their favorite sweatshirt. It's the most comfortable. So we got those in stock. So check that out at dreamrare.com, folks. Thanks for joining me, Pete, and I know we'll talk again sometime.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's been a blast. All right, thank you guys. Dream Rare Podcast, we're out. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, Freedom versus Tyranny shirts, Stay Blessed long sleeve, God is Great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk for $5 a month. You can help support me, support the show. If you haven't noticed, unlike other channels, I don't work with very many sponsors, sometimes none at all. And part of the way I'm able to do that is with the dreamrare.com shop and patreon.com/raretalk. So thank you guys for keeping this show free, unimpeded, uninterrupted. I'm forever grateful. My free email list is stayintouchwithme.com. So check the links below in the description, or just type in on any browser, stayintouchwithme.com, all one word. You'll find my email list, put it in there, and it's the least annoying email list you'll ever be on. I barely use it because I don't like getting emailed every day or every week. It's annoying. So I don't do it. Stayintouchwithme.com. It helps me take back some power away from big tech. Telegram, t.me/dreamrarechat or @dreamrarechat. Due to censorship, I post all my live stream and videos there. Sometimes I have some bonus content, and I try to give people a heads up when Facebook or YouTube won't. DreamRareChat at Telegram. My Instagram is @DreamRare. Thanks for everybody following there for shorter content. And DreamRareLinks.com, that's DreamRareLinks.com, has all my stuff. My podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, my music on Spotify and Apple, my Rumble page, my BitChute and Gab page. All my links are found at DreamRareLinks.com. Thanks for watching, folks. God bless you. You already know